Welcome to video 15 of the Search for a Better Health series. In this video, we're going to be looking at quarantine, the role that quarantine plays in Australia, and then we're going to be looking at how we can evaluate its effectiveness. In terms of some of the meta language we'll be using in this video, when we talk about prevention, we're talking about stopping the occurrence of the disease in individuals. When we talk about control, we're regulating the incidence of the disease in the population and stopping any further spread. And in quarantine, we're talking about the isolation of diseased organisms to control the spread of a disease. Quarantine plays a major role in minimising the risk of exotic pests and diseases entering Australia in order to protect native flora and fauna, agricultural industries, our environment, and ultimately our health. So in terms of Australia, Australia has the Australian Quarantine and Inspection Service, or AQIS, and that's responsible for maintaining Australia's reputation as a relatively disease-free country. Why is this so important in Australia? And that's because of our massive agricultural industry. We export about $30 billion worth of stock, product per year, and we have developed a reputation for being disease-free. And I guess the purpose of maintaining this high level of quarantine is to maintain this reputation. Australia is quite vulnerable to invasions by pests and disease because we have a large coastline and our proximity to neighbouring countries. And that's why it's super important that we have quarantine services and things in place to make sure that we don't, in fact, have any of these pests and diseases coming into Australia. So these are some of the strategies that we're going to go through in a moment. Border control, animal quarantine, plant quarantine, human quarantine, and then we have the Northern Australia quarantine strategy. And these are all strategies run by the AQIS. In terms of border control, this is the checking of passengers and cargo at any entry points into Australia. So we know that when you leave Australia via an airport or a seaport, they use techniques such as X-ray machines, detector dogs, surveillance, and inspection. And this is to regulate the items being brought into Australia. In terms of trying to deter people from bringing in these products, there are large fines and jail time if individuals are found bringing in any banned items into Australia. In terms of animal quarantine, any animal that enters Australia has to spend time at a quarantine station, and before they are released, the animal must be free of disease. So in these quarantine stations, they'll undergo a series of tests and inspections to make sure that they are in fact bringing in any diseases with them. Plant quarantine, so pretty much most plant material is refused entry into Australia. And the plant material that we're talking about here are all plants, any parts of plants, or any plant products. So things like fruit, seeds, cuttings, bulbs, and wood. Any plant material that is allowed to enter Australia is treated by quarantine officers in a similar process to the way animals are treated. But these plants are kept alive at these stations. Sometimes they're sprayed so that any likely pests or pathogens are destroyed, and they must remain in the quarantine stations until any diseases might have had time to develop to ensure that they don't have any before they are released into the custody or care of those people that have tried to bring them in. In terms of human quarantine, passengers on aircrafts and ships that might display any symptoms of any kind of infectious diseases need to be reported. And any aircrafts are also sprayed with an insecticide when they land in Australia to kill any pests that might enter with the aircraft. There are mosquito trapping programs at international airports which allow the quick detection of any mosquitoes entering the countries. And then we have the Northern Australia quarantine strategy. And this is an early warning system that involves the use of what we call sentinel animals. And these are animals such as cattle and pigs, and they're regularly checked for diseases. So if any of these animals develop symptoms of a disease that might not have been in Australia before, that the people taking care of these animals don't recognise these symptoms, it might be a warning sign that these pathogens are a threat to Australia. And then we can make sure that strategies are put in place to halt their spread and make sure that it doesn't spread into Australia. So this is ones we've just mentioned are in terms of things coming into Australia. And now we're going to discuss some of the quarantine strategies that we have within Australia. So within Australia, we have very strict restrictions on the movement of fruit, vegetables, and livestock from one area to another. And it's to prevent the spread of any existing pests and diseases in a certain area to areas that are free of these pests and disease. So each state and territory has in place their own legislation that regulates and governs the movement of these items. And it's to protect mainly agricultural industries from the invasions by pests and diseases, which means that they can continue to supply any local or international export markets. So one of the major restriction strategies within Australia is the fruit fly exclusion zone. And this protects the fruit growing regions within South Australia, Northern Victoria, and Southern New South Wales. So growers from within the zone can market their product as being free from the fruit fly, which allows them to be able to sell their products in some different markets that growers which are outside this zone cannot. Because fruit flies are unable to actually fly very well, it means that by having quarantine bins and public awareness campaigns around these areas, this is the main way in which fruit flies are excluded from these areas. And it's been quite effective because these areas have remained relatively free from the pest for the time that the exclusion zone has been in place. So the fruit fly, if it does get into crops, it makes the inside of the fruit pretty much inedible, and so it's really super important that these fruit flies are, not brought into these fruit growing regions, which means that these growers can make sure that they sell their products, make a profit, and make sure that our agricultural industry stays relatively strong locally and globally. Thank you for watching video 15. Make sure you tune in for video 16, which is the final video for the Search for a Better Health series.